with assertiveness, whether it has negative connotations, I think that's why I brought up the three different levels of passivity, of aggression, and assertiveness, because that I think that's why people maybe associate assertiveness with a negative connotation because they don't really know. I think some people think assertiveness is aggression, or they're just not sure how to do it, or they've never even really heard of it.
Welcome back to Out of the Box podcast, where Steele and I, Jose, your host, get to talk about outside of the box ideas. For those who are new to watching our podcast, this is a podcast that is dedicated really to providing new content, new ideas that we usually don't think about on the day-to-day basis. We bring in guests from different sectors of studies, from philosophy, science, mathematics, to history. Honestly, we cover different topics here in the podcast, but we are really in the search of truth and knowledge in the world. So we want to provide that out to you guys as well. So today we're going to be talking about assertiveness training, how to be more assertive. When is it a good time to be assertive? I think those are all things that at some point we kind of go through and we have a hard time expressing what we want in life. And so we want to talk about that a little bit. But before we actually get started, I want to invite you guys to like our this video if you do enjoy the content. Also subscribe to our channel because we are continuously producing new content every week for you guys. So please stay tuned so that you don't miss out on any of the new content. We are going to have some really interesting guests coming up. So we really invite you to do that. And also write a comment along the way if you hear something that was interesting to you. Please let us know down below because we want to know what is resonating with you so that we can continue to provide that type of content for you. So without further ado, Steele, so assertiveness in your life, have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to be assertive, but the situation kind of got out of hand and you just didn't know how to?
Yeah, so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I honestly, this is something I've struggled with my whole life. So yeah, no doubt about it. I had because I didn't know how to be assertive. No one ever teaches. I never was never like taught. There's no like rule book given to me in life in early life. Like this is how you be assertive. This is how you stand up for yourself. It was more like, hey, you should stand up for yourself, but it was never like how to do it. I need to know how to do it. And then when I started studying psychology and got into all that stuff, mostly in grad school, and actually, it was actually really started with philosophy, and that's when I started learning like how to be more assertive and stand up for your opinion and stuff like that. But just real quick, the philosophy, my first philosophy class was with Eric Chelstrom, the philosopher that we've had on here before. And that was the first time I realized that you can state your opinion and you can state your disagreement with someone else in a constructive way. I learned that was the first time I really learned how to do that, I guess. And that was when I realized, okay, so I can disagree with someone and I can use philosophy to word it and phrase it to where it will be less likely to lead to conflict and arguments and where it doesn't come off the wrong way. So I think that was always my fear before is just disagreeing with someone and coming off the wrong way. And philosophy helped.
Yeah. It's almost like we reprimand assertiveness as and we put it in the sector as like a negative aspect of life, right? Like, oh, like you have to treat them well, not be assertive. But it's almost like we associate assertiveness with like brutality, or we associate it with like it being coming off too strong, like you said. And so I think that there's a lot of negative connotations to the word that sometimes we feel like it's not it's not a community aspect word, right? Like doesn't drive unity in a sense. But I think I found in my personal life to feel the opposite, right? I think that assertiveness, in the contrary, if not done correctly or not done at all, um, can lead to a lot of resentment and a lot of disunity, because one starts having resentment towards others, which leads to anger, which leads to fights, which leads to division. And so I think I found in my personal life, and just, in my community, that whenever one is not assertive, it can lead to other things, right? That can bring disunity. So almost to say that assertiveness in a way is kind of telling the world what you want, so that you can continue to function properly, and so that you can continue to bring harmony to those around you, right? And so if it's almost like, if I don't have my cup full, right? If it's not full, then I'm just going to be giving of what's left over. And if people want to take what's left over and I don't have any more energy, then I'm gonna feel resentment, because I'm like, hey, like, I can't give anymore. Like, and they want to take my last bit of
Every
energy. Well, hey, I'm gonna fight for this. But it's like, well, what the problem wasn't on their side. It was oneself that, we didn't provide the space to just have my cup full, so that whenever they do come, like, I can just give freely, because I'm in I'm producing out of, abundance, in a sense, right? I know it's like kind of like a new age wording there, but um I think assertiveness does have a lot of benefits, and it could be more useful in the world for sure.
Yeah, and so what you've been describing there with the resentment is passivity. And so there's three different types, and I think this is why a lot of people find it hard to be assertive, because they don't really know what being assertive really means. You hear it all the time, like, "Hey, you should be more assertive," but like my confusion was, well, what do you mean by that? What does that actually look like? So here's what it looks like. You have three different types of things you can do, three different types of communication. You have passivity, you have assertiveness in the middle, and then you have aggression. So passivity and aggression are the two extremes of this timeline thing, whatever. And then assertiveness is right in the middle there. So passivity, like you said, leads to resentment because you let people walk all over you, um, and you never stand up for what you want, and that does build resentment over time. And then you have aggression on the other far end, where you're always aggressively asserting what you want and telling people what you want with anger, with a mean, like a negative tone, I guess you could say, and you're wording it in ways that are hurting other people, verbally or whatever. And so you can get a negative reputation from being too aggressive all the time. And then with passivity, you can get resentment. So you're losing on either side of that, line there. But assertiveness is the ideal because you're winning, because you're getting what you want, you're not getting a bad reputation, and because you're not being too aggressive, but then you're not letting people, you're not always letting people step over you kind of with passivity. So it's finding that balance, I think, is what people struggle with
Yeah.
the most.
Yeah, I mean, and the question, the $1 million question is like, well, how do you find that balance? Like, what does that look like in the real world? I think if we have some visual representations of what that looks like, that would be helpful. Just because I think sometimes people have not seen what that really, not only do they not know what it means, they have never seen it expressed in anyone else. They don't have a visual representation of what it means to be um correctly assertive in a situation.
Never been modeled for them, it's never been taught to them,
Exactly.
never seen it. So it's about body language, and as communication studies majors, we know that body language is the most important. It's a huge part of communication. It's like, I don't know, 75% of communication, and verbal is the other 25%, as a metaphor there. So it's about vocal tone, it's about eye contact, it's about body posture. So like passivity is you just like this, like talking in a low voice, like, I really want to do this, and you're avoiding eye contact. I'm not making eye contact. Like, man, I really wanted that raise, and we talked about it last week, and you gave it to the other person. Like, you're not going to get very far with your boss if you do it like that. But if you're like making eye contact, you're like, hey, we talked last week about me getting a raise, and I noticed that the other person here just started got a raise instead, and I was just wondering what changed. Like that's a perfect that right there, what I just did. That's a perfect example of assertive communication. Aggressive, if you do that aggressive, you're like, hey, last week you said you're gonna give this person a raise. Why didn't you give me one? I deserve a raise. I've been here for such a long time and this and this and that. So you see the
Yeah.
difference? Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you said, the tone and how you carry yourself can really change the how the message is perceived by other people, right? Because I think sometimes we think like, oh, like, well, because I've heard a lot of people, and I have some family members that do this as well, but they said like, well, I told them the truth, and and I told them like, yes, you said the truth, you stated the truth. However, the message didn't get carried across the same way because you said it like this. You did this like when you were telling them, um and that just carries across in the wrong way, right? And I think that's like communication. I'm starting to realize is very closely associated with being assertive, right? Like being a good communicator is also being assertive, right? Because if you're a good communicator, you essentially can be assertive, right? You have the potential to be assertive because if you can communicate right, then you can state what you want in life, right? In a way that other people can perceive it not as a threat and not as a wimp, but as, a human being with dignity, right? And so I think that those two kind of go hand in hand, but I have noticed that a lot of people lean from into one side or to the other just because of them not being able to communicate correctly. I think that's where it starts. To your point, you were saying that passivity is more like, hey, like, kind of like I a little bit more um slouch, like not giving yourself the importance of the situation, right?
All perceived,
And
all the external things we do are perceived and taken in, maybe even unconsciously by other people. So your
oh
posture,
yeah,
it people are perceive this as weak. That there's just no other way around that. Whereas if you're like this, people will perceive you as equal to their level. It does make a difference.
yeah, or to the other degree as well. Like if you're
Yeah,
too assertive and like not I think it's not being too assertive, it's to being righteously assertive. Like you're like just like, hey, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. Like nobody wants to be told like they're wrong and they're right.
you
They
one.
want to be able to like, hey, let's have a dialogue, let's be flexible with each other, let's see common ground. Not like, hey, you're wrong, you're banned, or like I'm right, and this is why I'm right.
And here's the thing,
um
I wouldn't know that, and that's the unfortunate thing. I wouldn't know that if I didn't go through the college program of learning philosophy and how to communicate, because a lot of colleges teach that, and problem solving skills, thinking skills, more advanced than, if I just came out of high school, I don't know if I would know that. I think I would just be depending on what other people do around me. So I think that's
yeah.
maybe that's why a lot of people struggle. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, because um, I was watching a video talking about how nowadays, like the school systems, they teach us a lot of things, but they don't teach us how to argue, how to debate,
Yeah,
how
that's not
how
until
to rightly debate. How to stand your stance, how to how to think through like arguments,
so maybe
right? We have essays and we write essays, but it's not to the degree of like stating your point or having a dialogue, a debate, you
exactly.
know?
Maybe that should start earlier in high school, at the very least in senior year or something like that. Instead of it doesn't start unless you go to college, and not everyone goes there.
Exactly.
So the people who
That
don't,
might be a good topic because I know there's several topics that are so helpful. Like even knowing like finance and that sort of thing. Those like assertiveness should be something that should be included at the public school level. But you know, instead of me maybe studying something else, maybe having required courses within that, because soft skills, like we kind of talked about in college, they go a long way. That's where essentially like a lot of the opportunities come from, how you're able to interact in the world, how you're able to move in the world. And sometimes we're not taught these things, not even in our family. And so whenever we go out into the world and we're trying to get a job, or we're trying to do whatever, we just have so much failure because we just never were taught how to actually go about these conversations, how to go about communicating to the world what we want.
Yeah, and teaching that in schools, like in public schools and high school, early on could be helpful, and not for everyone, because then you have people who aren't being overly aggressive because they know how to be assertive, and then you have people who aren't becoming resentful and hating their life, or just struggling to make their way through life because they're being too passive. So I think it benefits both sides, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if and I don't know what this lack of that type of knowledge is due to. Maybe we just have like really essential, like or primitive ideas of what school should be, and maybe that might be a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Um, but for sure, assertiveness is something that can eventually ease a lot of things. And I think there was a misconception, like how we were talking about at the beginning, to how assertiveness can have so many negative connotations. Is that something you found? Because I know you worked with clients before. Do they have just a wrong association of what it means to be assertive, or
Yeah.
they do they fully know, just that they can't enact it in their life?
I think it can be both depending on the situation, but to what you're saying, with assertiveness, whether it has negative connotations, I think that's why I brought up the three different levels of passivity, of aggression, and assertiveness, because that I think that's why people maybe associate assertiveness with a negative connotation because they don't really know. I think some people think assertiveness is aggression, or they're just not sure how to do it, or they've never even really heard of it. So I think people think that standing up for themselves, they imagine this aggressive person, and they're like, I don't want to be this way, and I don't want to come off the wrong way and start a conflict. So I think maybe that's
Like
where,
out of fear, right? They're
yeah,
coming from a state of fear.
maybe that's what.
For example, like what would be the first step? Like we can look at two scenarios, because it seems like assertiveness is kind of in the middle. And so what is the first step for a person that's going from passivity to the middle ground of assertiveness, and then the opposite, like too aggressive to assertive in the middle? What would be the first step for each side to start like becoming more assertive?
Yeah, so I think for passivity, it's how we talked about in other podcasts, learning when and how to say no and practicing that. That's something that I've worked with before. Um, so basically, it's like picking at least two situations a week, we could say, where you're in a situation where you say yes or no to something, and then you force yourself to say no, but not just the word no, but like say no with a sentence. And so it's not like just saying no, it's like saying, I wish I could help you, but I have this schedule right now, so I have these prior responsibilities that I have to do, so unfortunately I won't be able to do that right now. But so something like that. And so you encourage the person to go out and try that for a week, or even, well, actually, and then you check in on that and you see how's that going. And then you say, okay, well, what were some obstacles that came in front of it that stopped you from saying no with a sentence? And how can we overcome that? And then you problem solve. And then you kind of just keep practicing that. So I would just say, keep practicing saying no with the sentence, and notice what comes up when you try to do that. What thoughts come up, what obstacles come up, and how can you problem solve to overcome those when you want to go from passive to assertive. And also learn learn about what assertiveness looks like we just gave the example in the podcast, and what communication skills it involves in terms of body language, in terms of what you say, and in terms of your tone of voice. So all of that. So you want to try to make eye contact at an appropriate level and have a neutral tone of voice like I'm having right now, and then have a body posture to where you're not making yourself look weak. And then you want to rehearse maybe what you're going to say, and ask yourself if what you're saying isn't coming off the wrong way. Like, so you kind of just think about it for a second, like, could this be misinterpreted by the other person, come off the wrong way? And then you're prepared and you're ready to go have that conversation. Now, in terms of aggressive to assertive, that can be a bit trickier, especially if someone has anger problems or a temper, and that's what's causing it. Or it could just be they need to learn communication skills and just how to say it, like what I just laid out with the communication skills. And if it's like anger though, then they just need to learn some anger management skills, like a grounding technique, like counting 5 things in the room, or deep breathing, relaxation kind of thing, changing their thoughts when they're angry, to take a step back for a second. So there's different ways to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that those are good essential ways to go about it, and that's for those who are too assertive
Yeah, so that last
or
one was
too aggressive.
like people are too aggressive, so anger management, communication skills. But if the person's too passive, then just really it's about communication skills and practicing saying no with a sentence. And that's just a few things. I'm sure there's more than that. But
And it's almost like whenever we're in these situations, we kind of have a blind spot, right? We're not aware of how we're reacting to the world. And so we continue to have these cyclical events happen one after the other. It's like, well, why am I not getting what I want in life? Is it because of how I look? If we start almost kind of thinking about other things and sidetrack, where essentially it's, hey, no, it's actually your communication skills. Doesn't matter how you look or who you are. If you don't have the communication skills to say and state what you want, then it's really hard
it
to
is.
just go about getting what you want in life.
No, and sometimes we talked about this before with the dating and like approach anxiety with women. Sometimes when
Yeah.
you're in the moment, it's really hard to, like, oh, I learned that how to say no with a sentence, and I read this in a book or whatever. But when you're in the moment, your brain's not really. It's like sometimes you're like not in the mood. You're like, oh man, or you're in the moment, and that anxiety is coming back, or the anticipatory anxiety of what what you need to do kind of, but actually going through with it's really difficult because that anxiety is keeping you from acting on it, because you're worried about how people are going to respond to you, the rejection, the negative responses to you, and how they'll perceive you and how your reputation might change. So I think, that can be really hard, because it's like sometimes it's just hard, like when you're in the moment, you know
Yeah. Yeah, I think this applies to a lot of things in life. Like you said, relationships, jobs, career, friends, even, I think in all social interactions, if we're not being assertive, we're either receiving a lot of resentment or a lot of hate from people, right? From those two extremes. If we never learn how to balance our assertiveness, then we can just continue to fall through in both, depending on the how one's doing it. But yeah, I think there's long lasting like effects. And what would you say are some more benefits to being assertive? Is that maybe something that you walk through patients with, like, hey, like these are the benefits of actually being assertive,
yeah.
or do they already see them themselves?
Yeah, definitely. Like if a patient doesn't see it, then I would walk through. I think I have before, if I remember. But yeah, you would walk through what are the pros, what are the costs and benefits, what are the pros and cons, the positives and negatives of continuing the way that you're going right now, whether it's being passive or too aggressive. Let's look at the positives and negatives, and do the negatives outweigh the positives? And then the client would start realizing, well, maybe I should consider this because it is, you're right, it is causing me more harm than good. And so that's actually a common technique. And then so with assertiveness, you want to, and then I'm like, okay, well, so if we were to do this change and try assertiveness, what are the positives and negatives of that? And if the positives outweigh the negatives, or if they're even equal, it's like, okay, well, maybe this is something worth trying. And then you get that from them, because when you get something from someone else, they're more likely to be open to it, rather than just telling someone, you need to do this, you need to do this. It's just not as effective. When the idea comes from the person, they're more likely to want to do that thing. So that's why I always say, like, well, what do you think the positives are? And what do you think the negatives are? And then explore it. And so, yeah, I mean, so I think,
And I think to some degree, I've heard a lot of psychologists talk about this, is that sometimes people don't know how to be assertive because they don't know what they want,
oh, yeah.
right? Like it's like, oh well, I'm feeling a lot of resentment. I'm feeling this. They just haven't become aware of why they're feeling like that, and a lot of times it's also due because how I mentioned, they just don't know what they want in life, and so they don't know how to be assertive because it's like, well, I just say yes to everyone because I just don't know what to do with my time, so I'll just say yes, and that starts building resentment.
Yeah.
uh you
I,
know um and so I think that's when one comes from a passive state, right? They just, they don't know what assertiveness is. I think those can be scenarios, right, where they don't even fall in the aggressive or passive state. They don't know like what they want in the first place, so they can't really like tell you like passively like, oh, this is what I want, or they can't aggressively say like, this is what I want. They just don't know what they want. And so I think that might be maybe we could talk about this and you could explain it, but like how can someone go about state like writing down what they want? Is that, do they just have to go through deep questions and analysis and maybe just write down like, hey, life goals, right? And then what do I want in a wife? What do I want in a career? How do I want to grow in my career? And then just writing out these maybe like right now at the beginning it might seem like you still don't know, but at least like write down what essentially you would like, because I think I found that a lot of people, they can't be assertive in their decisions because society is telling them to do this, family is telling them to do this, and they kind of have an idea of what they want in life, but they just don't know, like they can't be assertive because they want to please society, but at the same time they want to please family, and they don't end up pleasing themselves,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so
I think what you're right. So you want to try to write down your life goals, and I want to go back to the positives and negatives. Like, you want to look at what are the positives and negatives of each of these goals. Like, and that looking at the positives and negatives of each of those goals will help the person decide why they want to pursue that goal, because the reason for pursuing it is so important. That's the reason we do anything in life. So you have to have a good reason. So it could be like going to college. The reason is I want to be able to have a job to where I make more money or something like that. And I also find this topic really interesting, and it could help me just improve my intelligence or something, stuff like that. The negative could be, oh, I have student loan debt, right, or something. So, and then you compare the negatives and positives and just go through it like that. But like you said, there might be a case where someone doesn't even know what their life goals are, and they don't even know what they want. And so, how can they say what's positive or negative if they don't even know what they want or don't want? So, then in that case, I would say maybe they just need more life experiences, because life experiences teach us what we like and what we don't like. And like me trying to learn how to play a musical instrument, for example, and I don't end up liking it, then I'll learn, okay, I don't want to play this instrument, and or I play a different one, like, oh, I actually like that. So then I learn this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And so life experiences and studying things and learning about things and researching online might help someone learn to find what they want in life.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's almost to say like, hey, go explore the world, go see the world, like get
Yeah,
to experience it and see what you do like and don't like, because that essentially will lead you to be more assertive and to other people. Because I know like sometimes, and I think this is a crisis that happens in college, is we want to go to college, we want to study, we want to have a career, but then we don't know what we want to study. Like, oh, like, should I study math? Should I study business? Should I study architecture? Or should I just, you know, be a monk and go into the mountains? It's just like, I don't know, And
yeah,
so
that's
it's
why
like not until you start trying and doing things, like I think that's where we get caught up, right? We have to do things, we have to go out there and explore and see like what do I want to do with my life?
but yeah, think about it.
Because
If you're just in the house all day and watching TV or whatever, and not going out in the world, how are you gonna figure out what you want? It's just
yeah,
impossible.
and I think that's why some people take like a sabbatical year, just like, hey, I'm just gonna go travel, like get to learn about the world. And I think that's super helpful. Like sometimes you just have to set the reset button. Hey, I need to pause. I need to pause like my life. I can't take another step until I find myself again.
Yeah,
That I think I hear that from a lot of people, even actors that I hear they have a long career. They
yeah,
almost have to say like, hey, I need to take some time off from
yeah.
acting and just kind of um tune back into who I want to be, because they can't continue to make decisions if they lost their reason for living, or maybe they already achieved the level of career that they wanted and now they need to refine themselves to continue being assertive in what they want in life, right? And so we can't be assertive until we explore what we want in the world. And so to know what you want, you have to go out and figure out things, just explore and figure out, hey, is this something I want to dedicate my life to? If so, let me start working towards it, so that when somebody comes in and says like, hey, um can you help me out this weekend, it's not to say no. Maybe you can help them, but what I'm trying to say is that if you did have like something in mind to plan out, then you can say like, hey, I would really like to help you, but I actually already had something planned out. And I think that's happened to me. The more I plan out my life, the more, and I'm not trying to like plan it out because I worry about what's going to happen in the future. I plan it out because I see like, hey, I have to help, with this podcast, and then I have to prepare music for the weekend. I have to do this for the business, and I have so many things that I need to schedule, so that when somebody says like, hey, do you want to hang out today? I can say like, hey, I would really like to hang out, but I have things to do. And so once I see them in my schedule, I'm like, okay, I actually don't have time. It's almost like when people do budgeting and they budget their money. When somebody comes along and says like, hey, like let's go out, or let's go play, you
Yeah,
can actually say like, yeah, actually, I just don't have money to do that right now.
yeah, I've been doing that.
um and so like you can actually be more assertive because you actually have clarity in your life. And I think if we audit our life in that way, like, and we kind of know what we want because we've explored what we wanted, we can structure our life with these like time slots that we can say like, okay, these are sacred, these are for specific times.
Yeah.
And and I think this goes for different people, but I think everyone needs social time as well. So we should actually allocate time for social time. It's not saying like, hey, just isolate yourself from the world and just focus on your career. It's like, well, no, like we actually need people. We need social time. We need physical contact with others. And so I think that's essential. Should be scheduled out too. But I'm trying to say is that like our goals and things that we want to do in life, we should schedule out time to actually achieve those goals, because otherwise we feel even resentment towards ourselves, not even other people. We feel resentment towards ourselves because we're not committing to the goals that we want to achieve, right? And I think that that can be another way of not being assertive to oneself, right? Not being assertive to what you want in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my final thing on that is I think you're right. I think having a plan for your life will help you know what to do whenever those situations come up compared to not having a plan and you're in a situation and you're like, well, I don't know, should I say yes or no? And I don't feel very confident because I actually don't know. So I guess I'll just say yes, and then before you know it, like we're kind of saying, you're running out of time to do the things that you want to do and you're not getting anywhere. So I think having a plan is important for that because then you actually have a legitimate reason in your mind, which reinforces the idea that I can say no because I actually have a good reason to say no. And I can provide that reason and not just say no, but say no in a sentence saying like I can't do this because of this. So I think that that could be a really important tool, the planning that you mentioned. And then the last thing I'll say is like I think assertiveness is extremely worth exploring. It's a worthy endeavor to take on because being assertive will help you so much in life, and not being assertive can hurt you in so many ways and prevent you from achieving your goals and build resentment, and it could lead to a life to where you're never getting what you want, and then that can lead to unhappiness. So I think it's really important to explore and yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys for watching towards the end of this video. We really appreciate you staying tuned with us every single week. We want to continue to provide amazing content for you guys. So please let us know down below what you thought was interesting of this video. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel because we are completely committed to continue bringing amazing guests here with you and also continue providing content from our side, experience that we've seen, research that we've done. And so we look forward to the next video and we will talk to y'all soon. Take care.